Welcome, everyone. We'll just give it a minute or two for everybody to join. So welcome, everybody. My name is Kalpana Wilson, and I'm going to introduce this panel on behalf of South Asia Solidarity Group, which is a UK-based anti-racist and anti-imperialist organization, which is involved in building solidarity with people's movements for democracy and justice across the countries of South Asia. So if you've just joined today's proceedings, I want to welcome you to this really important conference titled India on the Brink, Preventing Genocide. And it's been brought together, as the title suggests, in an atmosphere of real urgency. And it's brought together a really wide coalition of diaspora groups from across the world. And what we're going to be talking about in this panel is really central to why people both in India and internationally are increasingly warning of impending genocide in India, because the theme in this session is about the targeting and hounding of Muslim women in a way which really, as we've seen from other genocides across the world, is very characteristic of the build-up to genocidal violence. And we have a really inspiring panel with us today who are going to be introduced to you in a moment. Before that, I just wanted to take a moment for us to actually remember and honor the victims and survivors of the Gujarat genocide of 2002, and specifically the women and girls who were subjected to unspeakable forms of gender torture and violence, which really again kind of characterized those events. And of course, the Gujarat genocide of 2002, we are marking 20 years, and it casts a very long shadow on us today, because the Hindu supremacist forces which were behind those attacks and massacres and mass rapes are, of course, today in power nationally in India and across a number of states. And in a way, it's that which is the focus today. Now, since 2014, when the Hindu supremacist and Brahmanical supremacist regime of Narendra Modi came to power, we've seen gendered violence being intensified across the board. Gendered violence and attacks on Dalit women, on Adivasi women have further intensified. There's been a real epidemic of that. The militarized gendered violence faced by women in Kashmir has intensified, and we've seen minorities, Christians and others all being targeted. But the particular focus today is this real wave of targeting and hounding of Muslim women in India, which we see as an extremely disturbing kind of genocidal character to these attacks. And we're going to hear more about this, of course, from our speakers. Very briefly, we've seen in recent weeks, we've seen a whole range of really poisonous hate speech, calls for mass rapes and so on, go completely unpunished. And we know why that is, because those who are putting those across are very close to the government, to the ruling BJP, and to the whole host of Hindu supremacist organizations, which many of them belong to. We've seen Muslim women who've spoken out, who've been critical of Hindutva or of the government, targeted in these vile apps like Sulli deals and Bully Buy online. We've also seen the discourse around population growth and these incredibly draconian population control measures being passed, which clearly target Muslim women's bodies. So all of this is happening. And of course, most recently, and this is something which is going to be a major focus of today's discussions, is the targeting of very young women, students in Karnataka, and the Hijab Ban, which is, of course, not only a way of excluding Muslim young women from education, but it's really a way of excluding them from citizenship, and as some of our speakers will argue, from humanity. And this is all taking place, as we know, against a background of laws like the Citizenship Amendment Act, which creates a kind of tier of second-class citizenship for Muslims, and which has particularly affected Muslim women. And Muslim women, as we know, have been at the forefront of the really inspiring resistance to that too. Other laws like love jihad related laws, this myth of Muslim men forcibly converting Hindu women through marriage and so on. Again, very characteristic of genocides elsewhere in the world, this kind of discourse. So this is kind of the background in which it is absolutely urgent that we discuss these issues in international fora and really raise awareness about what's happening. So I'm really delighted to be able to introduce our moderator for today, Professor Aisha von Joden-Forgy, who has worked extensively on questions of gender and genocide. So just to briefly introduce Professor Joden-Forgy, she's the endowed chair in Holocaust and Genocide Studies at Keene State College. And before this, she was the Dr. Marsha Ratikoff-Grossman Associate Professor of Holocaust and Genocide Studies at Stockton University in New Jersey, where she also directed the master's program in Holocaust and Genocide Studies and founded the world's first academic graduate level genocide prevention certificate program. She's former president of Genocide Watch, former first vice president of the International Association of Genocide Scholars, and founder of the Lemkin Institute for Genocide Prevention. She has taught on the Holocaust, comparative genocide, gender, sexual violence, war, human rights, imperialism, and genocide prevention at several universities, and has lectured and published widely on these topics. Her most recent book is the edited volume, The Cultural History of Genocide, Volume 5, The Era of Total War, published in 2021 by Bloomsbury Press. So going to hand over now to Professor Jordan Faulkner. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, and also your very precise and helpful introduction to this panel. I think that frames the discussion today really beautifully. So I want to thank you. Thank you so much, Kalpana, for that. And it's really an honor to be here. And I was very excited to receive the invitation to act as moderator. And I'm very, very much looking forward to the discussion today. I'm here with an unbelievably great group of women, and I think our discussion today is going to be incredibly insightful, and we'll move things forward. So I want to introduce first Sabika Abbas, who is an Inc. Fellow and a performative poet. She's been performing since she was in college in Delhi, and has dabbled in writing, campaign strategy, street mural art, and much more. She's a gender rights activist, a poet, and an educator, and has over the years become synonymous with protest poetry. She describes protest poetry as a natural result of urban communities and the thriving interest in the arts, and has performed poetry to challenge patriarchy and reclaim public spaces. Sabika Abbas. Abbas's poetry encapsulates the trials and tribulations of a young Muslim woman trying to exist in present-day India. So please, Sabika.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I am honored to be a part of this conversation. Before I begin, I just want to say that whatever articulation that I have, it has been learned from the women who came before me, and especially the Muslim women who have been articulating the politics in the public sphere in India for a very, very long time. So I've learned from them, and I'm here to carry forward that fight. And I want to acknowledge the kind of sacrifices, the kind of resistance, the kind of fights that they have continuously put up. Just as the context of this conversation was set, I think it is true that this attack on Muslim women is not overnight. It is not an attack that actually started in 2014, for that matter. We've seen the attacks that the Muslim women face across India for a very, very long time, even during the previous governments. Whether it was in the name of population, whether it was in the name of fertilizing, Muslim women, and whether it was in the name of, making them undergo surgeries forcefully, whether it was in the name of, politicizing the triple talaq, which is a fight of Muslim women, under which the names of people under which the current government has written their name, the fight of Muslim women, was actually appropriated by the current government, because there's this whole fetish of acting as messiahs of Muslim women across the political discourse that happens in India, especially by the Brahmanical patriarchy and especially by the right-wing government, who always want to be like our messiahs, coming on a white horse, trying to save the very, very oppressed Muslim woman who is, who needs to be saved from the hands of the Muslim man. And this continuous attack another part of this attack is also to villainize the Muslim man continuously in public spaces, in personal again and again. So there's this fetish that, we are going to save you from triple talaq, we are going to save you from quote unquote the oppressed clothing that you wear or the practices of your community. And this has been going on for a very, very long time. And when Muslim women came out in the public sphere, continuously articulating their politics, and just to be clear, that Muslim women are also not a monolithic identity. Muslim women have as intersectional an identity as any other woman in this world or any other individual in this world. They have their reasons why they do what they do, why they study what they study, why they exist, how they exist. They are different and unique. So every time any political discourse happens from any side, everyone really wants to paint Muslim women in just a singular color. So that is not the case. But coming back to the fetish of acting as our messiahs, we came in the public spaces, we questioned, we wrote, we became journalists and poets and leaders and occupied streets. So their job, self-taken job of being a messiahs, was snatched away from them, and they continuously move towards dehumanizing us, fetishizing us, calling for our rapes, putting in efforts, money, sponsorship, planning to ensure that they remove us from spaces of narrative building. They want to remove us from they want to remove us from social media spaces, because that space is also does also contribute to narrative building. And this attack is not new, whether the making of the Sulli Deals app or our names, for example, came in Bully Buy app, etc. So all these two apps that were created were not the first one. I remember when I was really young and in college, I remember my own classmates had made this Quora group where they put faces of vocal Muslim women and started abusing them continuously. I mean, I could pick up my phone and show the messages that my own classmates have sent me, which are full of rape threats and death threats. And we sat in classes with these people, and so it's not new. There were, every time Muslim women started putting up their selfies or pictures on Eid, those photographs were auctioned online. So this coming together of an app was just a culmination of this hate that was happening since a very, very long time, because they're afraid that Muslim women are out there, whether it is on Twitter, it is on Facebook, or whatever social media, and they're speaking up. And secondly, they also want to remove us from spaces of education, from spaces where Muslim women are challenging the power dynamics, where they are reclaiming the spaces that were taken away by the Brahmanical patriarchy and everyone who's complicit in that, and everyone who thinks that Muslim women, needs to be saved. And this process is also part of this removing of Muslim identity from public spaces. So actually, the hijab represent the Muslim identity, and for them to remove anything in India that is Muslim, whether it is a raising of a mosque, whether it is removing of things that renaming things that sound Urdu and Arabic, because they have associated that to Muslimness. So this action to continuously remove and villainize the presence of Muslim identity in public spaces and create fear in the hearts of people, in the hearts of the majority, so that every time they see a hijab, they think that, oh, they're the villains. Every time they see a skull cap and a beard, they think, oh, this person is the villain. So we, by virtue of asserting our identity in public spaces, automatically become criminal in their eyes. So there's this continuous action, because Muslim women have been reclaiming these spaces, whether it was especially during the anti-CAA and RC protests. Muslim women have been at the forefront. They were sitting nights after nights in the cold winters, talking, asserting, speaking up, ensuring that the fascists are not able to sleep properly at night, ensuring that the world listens to us, and at every time challenging this idea that we're oppressed, we need to be saved, someone else needs to hold mic on our behalf and speak up and talk about us. This all of this and this fear that we are here, we've arrived, we're not backing down. In fact, we are the only hope for not just our community, but for the entire country and to hold up the constitution, to hold up our identity, to hold up the rights that our constitution gives us again and again, and to build solidarity and leadership. And they're afraid that we are, despite of their continuous efforts to raise us down, we are building our leadership. We are consolidating across the country, and in fact across the world. We are able to create that kind of and this is what is moving into a hijab row. The hijab row, quote unquote, is actually, I don't want to call it the hijab row, because the row is not the hijab. The issue is not the hijab. This is not the time to discuss, for example, whether it is good or bad, or it is choice or not. This conditional solidarity is something that we don't want warned, where we've been invited on panels and journalists have asked us, is it worth compromising on your education? Well, today they're asking us to remove the hijab. Tomorrow they are going to ask us to change our names. Day after tomorrow, something else. So our idea is to call them out, and take their hands and bend it over in the first place itself, in the first attack itself. So right now the conversation or the issue is not the hijab. The issue right now is the hate, the act of discrimination, and the massive marginalization that Muslim women are facing at every step of their existence. When they go to banks to withdraw money, when they go to universities to study, when they go to schools and colleges to study, when they pick up their pen to become a journalist, write poems, to, when they come and articulate on social media, when they just exist, when they love, at every point, Muslim women are being targeted, and that hate needs to be the question. Because right now, what breaks my heart is that Muslim women, the biggest misfortune of this situation has been, number one, the lack of proper solidarity and allyship. It is the presence of a Muslim woman, and her assertion is not just a matter of debate in the right wing, but even the liberal progressives in a lot of ways have come and demeaned us, demeaned our existence, and literally called us oppressed, and said that, oh, we understand, but that kind of conditional solidarity has been extended to us. And we should not forget that even the people who claim to be our allies have issues with our Muslimness, especially overt Muslimness, because everyone is looking towards a model minority, a minority that hides being Muslim, in various parts of their own ribs and doesn't show it overtly. So, or from both sides. So this conditional solidarity and lack of allyship has been really disheartening. And I'm using very soft words. Actually, it's more than that. The second bit has been the hate that fellow students and classmates have shown. Just imagine closing your eyes and sitting next to people in a class and studying and not feeling safe. Even if government or the state doesn't go ahead and ban the hijab, even if we win after an exhausting fight, even if we win, how do we think that those young people, those young Muslim women are going to sit in classrooms with classmates who called for their death, who called for their rape, who called for their removal from classrooms, from education institutions, and that has become a reality. How are we going to create an environment where these young Muslim women are going to study, see the dreams that they want to dream, think of a future? And for that matter, in this country right now, and I continuously say that, the hopelessness is that an entire community has stopped gossiping. An entire community has stopped thinking of a near future that is beautiful, a future that could become, of their individual future. So that has happened. And right now, the same teachers who were teaching us in schools, we've always had Islamophobic teachers since childhood, no denying that. Since childhood, I think as a Muslim woman, I have faced this. I'm sure other Muslim women would also say that they faced it. There's no denying that. But right now, the state and government have given them the power to be even more hateful. The thing that everyone needs to talk about right now is the youth of India has been radicalized to an extent that electoral politics or the removal of this government is just going to be a band-aid. It requires massive social and socio-political work to remove the seeds of hate that have been sowed, reaped, worked upon, fertilized over 80 years of hard work by the RSS and the Brahmanical patriarchy. It has been done, and everyone needs to focus on the hate that is coming, towards Muslim women. And this shifting focus of conversation. Another question that one of the journalists asked me was, when Muslim women wear a hijab or cover their head, I, as a Muslim woman, covers my head sometimes, doesn't cover my head sometimes. But there are, because this is a choice that Muslim women are being asked to make between their choice to wear what they want, between their belief to wear what they're wearing, and the choice to have access to public spaces, to the opportunities to have a bright future. I was asked, if you cover your head and your friends and the people around you, change their behavior towards you because of that, is it worth losing friendships? and relationships. And this is an international channel that is asking me this question. My point being, do we really need friends whose friendship change on the basis of what is on our head and what is not, and what our belief system is, what is not? We'd rather not have them at all. So we've been, I'll just keep it short and try to wrap this up, that, just last 2 points that I want to make is that Muslim women, everyone is afraid of us. Everyone is afraid of our articulation. Everyone is afraid of our assertion. They're afraid, and we are fighting. We are fighting because we think that we are the only hope. This is the only hope that we have. The only hope that I have is that people like Aisha, people like Safura, people like all these young Muslim women are fighting, asserting, articulating, and they are ensuring that a fascist cannot sleep well. They're ensuring that this Brahmanical patriarchy has sleepless nights. We are like thorns in their eyes. They're having a very difficult time in dealing with the Muslim women who are here, who have arrived, whether it is, overnight in Shaheen Bagh, whether it is, on various media channels across the world. We are here, we've arrived, and we are fighting every day, but I wish we didn't have to fight. I wish every morning when we woke up, we didn't have to prepare an email testament to be sent to the court. I wish we didn't have to come online every day, but just to, post about our every day, rather than, post about the impending genocide, the call for rape and threat. And it's not surprising, because their ancestors actually wrote down and called for the rape of Muslim women again and again. From Savarkar to all the RSS ideologues were firm believers of this. And from morning till evening, every day, lawmakers, their videos surface calling out, calling for, a killing of Muslim women. Today morning, there was this, I saw a video of a young woman wearing saffron dupatta, actually saying things like, if you want hijab to be seen in India, remember, we are going to cut you down to pieces. So just the fact that every morning we wake up to see all of these things as a community and as individuals, we still try to function, we still try to go to offices, we still try to exist with a future that seems really, really bleak for us. And we are fighting every day. But as I said, I wish we didn't have to fight. I wish we could just exist. I wish we could get all the opportunities and the rights that our constitution gives us. But you're fighting every day. I don't want to be called brave. None of us wants to be called brave and courageous and fighting on the streets every day. No, we just want to exist in a space that actually promises social justice. And our fight is for social justice. All these leaders are not just the leaders of the Muslim community or the Muslim women. We're the leaders that are actually trying to change and resist the political scenario of the country right now. So I wish we didn't have to fight. I wish we had better solidarities. I wish that this wasn't so exhausting. But the truth is that the world runs on hope. The world runs on the shoulders of all these brave women who inspire me every day. And the truth is that we are granddaughters of the witches that you burnt. So we're not going to bow down. We're going to be out on the streets. We're going to eat up the moon, and it'll shine on our foreheads, and we'll reclaim the nights and parliament, from the village elections and Parshad elections to the parliament of this country. We're going to be there as voices of hope, social justice, human rights, and ensure that nothing goes wrong anymore. So beware, we're here, we've arrived, and you can really not do anything about it, despite all the sponsorship that you put into our systemic discrimination. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Savika, for that absolutely for that impassioned and incisive testimony. That is wonderful. I want to say to all of our guests that we will take questions at the end. And so please, I see there's some questions already in the Q&A. So please write your questions as they occur to you, and then we will address them one by one at the end of everybody's presentation. So thank you again so much, Savika. I look forward to discussing your points at the end of today's discussion. So we're going to move on to Aisha Rena now. who is one of the prominent leaders of the protest movement against the Citizenship Amendment Act that sparked off from the Aligarh Muslim University and Jamia Millia Islamia. She is currently the national secretary of the Fraternity Movement, a postgraduate in history from JMI in New Delhi. Aisha has been at the forefront of the struggles of the marginalized communities across the country. Hailing from Kondati in Kerala, Aisha was also the vice president of Yes India, a non-governmental organization working for the students in the coastal north of the state. So welcome, Aisha. I hand it over to you. Thank you.
Hi, hope I am clearly audible, right? Yeah. Assalamu alaikum. I'm so much honored to be a part of a 3-day virtual summit, India on the Brink, Preventing Genocide, jointly organized by the international diaspora-led organizations and allies around the globe, and with the panel on the title Hijab Ban, Hate Speech, and Hounding, Targeting of Muslim Women in the Long Shadows of Gujarat 2002, and of course with the panelists. Usually, when people are sad, they don't do anything. They just cry over their condition. But when they get angry, they bring about a change. This is what Malcolm X said, who still remains to be an inspiration for the downtrodden and the marginalized communities all over the world. February is his Shahadat Din, and also February is a month when most of the genocides against the Muslims were executed. Let it be the Nelly massacre, Gujarat pogrom, Northeast Delhi pogrom that happened in 2020, Gunan Poshpara, etc. In this particular February, Indian Muslims are going through the hijab ban in Karnataka, which is a part of a genocidal project executed by the Sangh Parivar or the Hindutva regime. Hounding and targeting Muslim women, especially the Muslim women, were always a part of their formation of the Hindutva Rashtra, which was followed by the mob lynching, attack, harassment, then the brutal killings, the rapes against the Muslim women, and let it be in the offline or let it be in the online, this is something which has been continuing in India for so long. So Lydial is a recent example of degrading, dehumanizing, and vilifying of the Muslim women by auctioning them in the online platform. All these things that is happening out of pure Islamophobia, which is embedded in them. The current controversial hijab ban is also a part of the hate crime and Islamophobia, which is being built up and executed by the Sangh Parivar. Actually, right now when I'm joining the panel, I'm in Karnataka. I, along with panel, a group of delegation from the fraternity movement, we, for the past 2-3 days, we are in the Karnataka. We have been having conversations, discussing and analyzing the things over here. We had a lot of conversations with the students who are protesting against the hijab ban, who are leading us in this fight against the hijab ban in India. So I would like to point out some ground realities and some things which I have gained from all these 2 days. So one of the first things is like it's happening in the Karnataka. Earlier, the hijab ban or this hijab ban is the smaller versions or the larger versions of the hijab bans had existed or existing in the different parts of the world as well. So this particular hijab ban is happening in the Karnataka right now. It's in the southern parts of India. It's also known as to be the UP of South India. So the Karnataka is ruled by the Bharatiya Janata Party, BJP government. So slowly or gradually they are executing their genocidal projects all over the country. So Karnataka issue in the Karnataka can be also seen as a part of that. So coming into the hijab ban issue, Udupi and Kadambura are the 2 hotspots in which the college authorities all of a sudden stopped allowing the Muslim women in hijab to enter inside their classes. More than 64 institutions have banned hijab as of now. Few were banned before the interim court order, a few banned after the interim court order was produced. So one of the most important aspects of this particular hijab ban is these girls, these students, I'd like to call them as women because they are bravely protesting, they're bravely showing up their courage all over. So they were wearing this hijab for so long. It's like, I had a conversation with the students in the Katampura. There are 5 colleges in the Katampura, and they told for more than 20 to 30 years, from the very beginning of their college life, or that college, the Muslim girls were coming, Muslim women were wearing hijab, and they were attending classes for so long. So it's not like all of a sudden Muslim women started coming to the colleges wearing the hijab and they started. It's not like that. This is something which we have been doing for so long. It's a part of our faith. We have been going through this for so long. We have been doing this for so long. So the hijab ban thing happened all of a sudden because of the Hindutva infiltration and the saffron shawl people when they started problemating it. So soon this thing started snowballing all around the states, and right now everyone are waiting for the final High Court order of the Karnataka. While we are discussing about the hijab ban in the Karnataka, I would like to point out some things that happening as a part of this. The boys who were not ready to wear the saffron shawls were very brutally beaten up. The boys who were supporting the girls were beaten up. The girls were receiving the number of threat calls. Their families are being attacked, and so many kind of hate crimes, abusive kind of messages, and they are going through such a traumatic experience for the past few months actually. And also, there an high tension happened in the Shimoga after the death of a Bajrangi Dal activist. In the Shimoga, in the last few days, more than 70 families were attacked. They have evacuated to a safer place because of the attack they're receiving from the part of this Hindutva goons. The saddest part is like the administration and the police who should have saved the Muslims who are actually supporting the goons. So it's like they're going through so many kind of things. But alhamdulillah, the casualties are very less. There is no huge casualties. But for the Muslim women or the Muslims in all over the India, it's like every day we are waking up to a news of somebody getting lynched for not chanting Jai Sri Ram. It started becoming a normalizing thing for the Indian Muslim. So whenever some sort of kind of things happened, we used to look at the number of casualties. If the casualties was very low, or if there is no casualties, we are thanking the God, because that has become a custom, or that has become something which we have been going through for so long. And the attack on the Muslims, let it be the Muslim women, let it be the Muslim men, let it be their institutions run by them, let it be the shops which they own by them, it has started normalizing. And the genocides also, it has also started normalizing. The discrimination we are receiving every day, it has become normalizing. It's like, yeah, we guys are on the fight for our existence right now. Let it be the Citizenship Amendment Act, or let it be the hijab ban, or the things that happening nowadays. We guys, like Sabha pointed out, we are really fighting for our own existence. We are not asking for more. We are just asking for our existence. And also, I'd like to bring into certain debates that's happening, or certain discussions that are happening all over the hijab ban issue. First of all, being someone who is wearing hijab and who is practicing, who is going around with hijab, the one thing which I wanted to point out is we are wearing hijab out of our own consent. We are wearing hijab out of our own choice. We decided to practice hijab. We decided to wear hijab because of out of our relationship with our Allah. That is what we have. It's it's not something that was compelled on us by somebody like the progressive or like the liberal circle are accusing Muslim women to be discriminated, marginalized, oppressed under the hijab. It's not a thing. We, the Muslim women, have decided to wear the hijab. We decided to go ahead with the practices which we are not kids. We are grown-up people. Everybody have their own education and it came out of their choice. There are people who are wearing the hijab. There are people who are not wearing the hijab. That doesn't make them less Muslim or bad Muslim or Muslim. It doesn't have that kind of connotation. It's completely and purely based upon their choices and the way in which they wanted to present them to the world. And another thing is like, and also one more thing which I wanted to point it out, this particular practice of our religion is constitutionally provided, or that is something which was Indian Constitution provided through the articles of 19 and 25 of the Indian Constitution. So hijab is something which is a part of all of us. But the media or the people outside, they are nowadays, they are so much engaged in discussing about whether hijab is a essential religious practice or not, whether hijab is allowed. What does the Quran say? Quran, they are putting up with the different narratives and they're discussing what is the Quran, what is written in the Quran, out the Quran, what other people are doing. It's really disturbing because this is not something which we have to discuss about. This is not the time which we wanted to discuss whether it's an essential religious practice or not, or whether it's been practiced, whether they have been practicing for so long or not. This is the time in which we wanted to stand in solidarities with the people who are protesting for their choice, people who have been in the forefront of the protest to go ahead with their choice to wear the hijab. So, so much of we want the solidarities with not buts and not so, and with too much of explanation or too much of kind of things. We have been going ahead of this fight for so long. And also another thing, like we had, when I was talking with a certain activist or some people, they were asking me, they were saying like, oh, the fight is not for the hijab, Aisha, that is for the parda, that is for the niqab. No, I'm talking from Karnataka. I have discussed with the students and I'm telling the fight is for the hijab. It's to wear their headscarf, which they have been doing for so long. It's not like, and it's very disgusting to hear from them, and that kind of the narrative is being spreading all over the India as well, and through that they are trying to misguide the things that are happening in the Karnataka as well. And also one more thing which I wanted to say is this is not a local issue, or this is not something which is happening in a particular small area of India. This is clearly a part of the Sanghparivar agenda. This is clearly a part of the genocidal project which they have been implementing for so long. They have came to a point when they have the power, they have all the authorities to implement it, so they just started implementing it. So this is a time in which people should stand with the minorities, stand with the people who are fighting for the existence. This is everybody should understand the differences between the majority communalism and the minority assertion. This is not the time to compare both of them. This is our fight for our existence. Like going back to that, what Malcolm X said, like we, the Muslims, have been victimized for so long. We have been telling to keep silent or to forget or to forgive for so long. When the Barbary happened, when the Kashmir happened, when the massacres happened, when Muslims were brutally killed, everybody was telling like, you guys should keep quiet, you shouldn't be protesting, you shouldn't be coming on the street. But what else we can do? This is right now, we have been forgetting for so long, and finally we reached a stage in which we only have the option to fight in the streets and protest against all these things, and we have decided to do that as well. And if the solidarities are coming up, please stand with us without their buts and without their too much of explanations and without too much of trying to empower us with all the kind of things. This is we Muslim community is standing no longer as the victims. We are the fighters. We are the fighting against all the discrimination we have been facing. We decided to face it face to face. We have decided to go ahead with this fight until we are winning. And inshallah, this fight is completely, in this fight, we'll definitely win. This is the only fight in which, and also we have decided to fight until the last breath also. So yeah, that is the thing. Thank you so much for inviting me. Before concluding, I would like to assert it one more. We are no longer the victims. We are the fighters in this forefront. We will be fighting and we'll win this fight also, inshallah.
Thank you so much, Aisha, for that wonderful presentation, and also for that passion and for framing the issues. And I know we're going to have a lot to talk about. And especially thank you for your voice from the trenches, as it were, right? And for the fight. That was wonderful. Thank you. So we're going to move now to Kavita, but actually perhaps before we move, there is a question that perhaps we can answer right now. So someone has said, my Hindi is very bad. Can you please translate the exact word or meaning of bully bai and sully bai? Thank you. So perhaps since this is a topic of conversation that will be brought up again, Kavita, would you like to do the translation before you begin? And then I will introduce you. So first translate and then I'll introduce you, okay?
Yeah, I just want to say that those are actually slurs. They don't have a specific meaning. These are slur words. I don't like to use them. In fact, I try to avoid using those particular words in describing those apps because they are simply a way of sexualized slur for Muslim women. So they do not have any usage outside of the Hindu supremacist ecosystem. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
Actually, sulli and bully comes from this perverse version of where a Muslim woman is actually called a mulli in India, and that is then used as sulli and bully to basically dehumanize us. And
thank you both. Thank you for that clarification. Thank you. Okay, so we are going to move now to Kavita Krishnan, a feminist and left activist and writer. She is National Secretary of the All India Progressive Women's Association, a mass organization of rural and urban working women, and a Politburo member of the Communist Party of India, Marxist-Leninist. She is editor of the party's monthly publication, Liberation, and author of the book Fearless Freedom, published by Penguin in 2020, which won the National LAADLI Media and Advertising Award for Gender Sensitivity in 2021. So congratulations for that. And thank you very much for being here. And I hand it over to you, Kavita. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to say first that I'm so glad to have heard Savita and Aisha. I totally endorse what both of them have said, and I want to take their words as the starting point here. I think that the first thing to make clear here is that the red herring, that is, the hijab debate, this is not a debate over the hijab. What is happening right now in India is an attempt to, debate the existence of Muslims in this country. And that is precisely what we need to talk about. I totally want to endorse that, issues about patriarchy inside communities and so on and so forth. Those are a separate thing, which there is plenty of time to talk about. There is no shortage of instances and avenues where those things could be spoken of. And Muslim women do this in any case themselves extremely well. The thing to remember here, and I want to begin by reading out two quotes to the people who are listening here, because I think that it's time to bring back here the fact that the hijab is the latest in a long series of symbols of Muslim identity and visibility that are being made the pretext for attacking Muslims, demonizing them, portraying them as alien to India. And, I just want to first quote a BJP leader, elected representative in the state of Uttar Pradesh, which is in the middle of elections right now. He made public speeches in which he said that, well, we are getting rid of the hijab, and we are not going to stop there. Muslim men wear the skull cap, and we are going to make sure that their skull cap is taken off and they put on the Hindu tilak instead. Okay, something that is worn in the middle of the forehead by Hindus. So I think that it's important to remember that that is basically the subtext of everything that is happening. The excuse that is being given is that, oh, these schools or these colleges have uniforms, and so how can you wear the hijab with a uniform? So this entire debate is about, oh, uniform. And when you listen to Hindu supremacists on Indian television and so on, if you do so, I feel very sorry for you. But if you do so as part of your job to know what's happening, you see that they often use the word uniformity. So they use the school uniform, college uniform, and they say, look, uniformity, that's what we want. And the whole point here is that, in schools and colleges where there are uniforms, it has always been the case that people of all communities in India have routinely, well, the Sikh boy will wear the patka, the Muslim girl will wear a hijab, Hindu girls wear all kinds of symbols, from the bindi to the sindoor to some certain kinds of religious bangles and so on and so forth. So in fact, the Hindu supremacists in Karnataka have made it very clear, because when the Muslim girls wearing hijab brought this up, and they said that, look, you are banning the hijab in the name of the uniform, but Hindu girls are wearing all these other things. They immediately spun that to say, oh, look, these Muslims are trying to strip Hindu women of the bindi and the sindoor and the this and the that. And we are not going to stand for anybody trying to take those symbols of Hinduness away from women who are wearing uniforms and going to college. Okay, so it is absolutely clear that this is an attack on the hijab because of its Muslimness. Now, where does that come from? I want to remind people here listening that this is not just something that the BJP, which rules India now, has just come up with now. This is consistent with the ideology of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, which is a fascist organization, which is basically the power behind the Bharatiya Janata Party, which is ruling India right now. And I want to read out two short quotations from the pages of the ideologues of the RSS, whom the Bharatiya Janata Party, and especially Narendra Modi as Prime Minister, regularly publicly adulate. So here is what Golwalkar, who is one of the founders of the RSS, in a book called We or Our Nationhood Defined, he said that the foreign races and he called India Hindustan, so Hindu country, must either adopt the Hindu culture and language, must learn to respect and hold in reverence Hindu religion, and must entertain no idea but those of the glorification of the Hindu race and culture, of the Hindu nation, and must lose their separate existence to merge in the Hindu race, or may stay in the country wholly subordinated to the Hindu nation, claiming nothing, deserving no privileges, far less any preferential treatment, not even citizens' rights. This was a book, of course, in which Golwalkar also said that Nazi Germany was the model that Hindu supremacists in India could learn and profit by. Those are his words. Now, I want to read out another short quotation from another RSS leader, Deen Dayal Upadhyay, who is often projected by certain persons in the BJP as being more liberal than Golwalkar. So they say, oh, he has this ideology of integral humanism. I won't use the word that is springing to my lips, but let's say that is complete rubbish. Let's stick with the word rubbish. Okay. So what does he say? This is in an article from 1953 called undivided India, Akhand Bharat. So this is the notion that India is not just about the territory that is recognized as India now. It includes basically all its neighboring regions. And so it is including parts of China, Nepal, Myanmar, Pakistan, of course, Bangladesh, you name it. So all that is basically this greater India, you can call it that, undivided India. So they call it undivided India, but basically it means some kind of greater India. So in this article, he says that we need to find a solution for, and I quote, separatist and anti-national attitude of the Muslim community. So to understand what is happening now with the hijab, the whole propaganda by the television channels and so on, which are the active propagandists of the Modi regime, are basically, they are trying to say that, look at these, these are, Muslims are just stubborn and they're backward. And this is some, Saudi Arabia thing, this hijab, this headscarf, we have no place for it in India. It's another matter that, Hindu women all over the country cover their heads. And as a matter of routine, it's extremely common in South Asian culture. So the point is, so they say that, this is a separatist and anti-national attitude displayed by the wearing of the hijab. This is the instance of that. So then he asks in that 1953 piece, he asks if the Indian National Congress Party, which was then in government, he says, would they want Muslims to be driven out of India? Surely not. And he says, if not, there's only one option. So either Muslims should be driven out from India. If not, Muslims will have to be assimilated into the national life of this country. In other words, Muslims must be made Indian. And then he explains what he means by making Muslims Indian. He says, we must change the 30-year-old policy. And he's writing in 1953. So he's talking about 30 years, which includes, India during the freedom struggle as well as independent India. And he says, this is the 30-year-old policy of Hindu-Muslim unity, which Congress adopted on a wrong basis. So Hindu-Muslim unity means that Hindus have a separate identity, Muslims have a separate identity, and they have a unity as Indians, and it's possible for them to be friends in spite of being different. So he says, no, if you want unity, we must display Indian nationalism, which is Hindu nationalism, and Indian culture, which is Hindu culture. So what Sabika said is absolutely right, that today it is the hijab, tomorrow it could be certain names, anything that speaks Muslimness is something which Muslims will be asked to give up. That is what we need to really understand as what is happening here. The other thing is, I find, I think it is, I cannot even begin to imagine how disturbing it is for Muslim women to experience the fact that their fundamental rights are being debated in the courts, that it is basically at the mercy, their existence with dignity is at the mercy of what a particular judge may think, what liberal Indians may think, and their prejudices about the headscarf, their half-baked ideas about how France has banned it, and so of course we must ban it here, and all of that, and all of this. The point is that to have your rights, and I speak, I should also say this, that women in India in general, and I've written about this earlier, are also feeling this existential threat to their freedoms more broadly, because the same Hindu supremacist groups that are attacking Muslim women in this vicious manner, they are also continuously demonizing the figure of the woman protester, including Hindu women who are protesting. So if you're a young Hindu woman protesting, if you are an older woman like Sudha Bharadwaj, who was in prison till recently, basically any figure of the woman who is outspoken and critical of Hindu supremacist idea of what India should be, basically you are an anti-national, and you need to be trained. You need to be coached back and made Indian, And in particular in coastal Karnataka, since 2008 until now, there's been a concerted campaign by Hindu supremacist groups. The campaign has included attacking school-going girls who are Hindu and Muslim and are friends with each other and visit each other's homes. So they're basically trying to implement a policy of apartheid over there between Hindus and Muslims. So they attack Hindu and Muslim friends, Hindu and Muslim classmates. They have been known to stop a bus, and this was way back in 2008 and 9. They stopped a college bus and one second. They basically stopped a college bus and tried to tell the students. They forced students off the bus because they said there are Muslim and Christian and Hindu students together inside the bus and they can't travel in a bus together. They did that, and they have also attacked women inside a pub who are saying, oh, they're wearing Western clothes and they are dancing to music and all of this, and all this is un-Indian. So, it is not about, it's very much about the Hindu supremacist idea of what Muslim women should behave like and how Muslims should be. But it's also about a Hindu supremacist idea of how women should be. And an outspoken woman certainly has no space over there. And having said that, I think that I also want to just mention here that in spite of the very gloomy situation right now, I found a small piece of hope in a couple of things, which I want to just flag here. There were photographs in newspapers from South India that showed photographs, when college was closed for some days because of this so-called hijab controversy, and when the state government of Karnataka reopened it, you had photographs of girls in their uniforms, basically walking to school. It's pre-university, so it's basically these are 16, 17-year-old girls who are walking to school in their various uniforms from various schools, colleges, whatever. And you can see very clearly that there are Hindu girls holding hands with women with their friends who are wearing hijab. And you can see very clearly, I pointed this out to people who said, oh, but why is that? Can't that Muslim woman, Muslim girl not wear a hijab? Just, why does she have to want to stand out? So that is the propaganda that, Muslims are just, deliberately kind of wanting to stand out and just think. And I pointed out that in the photograph, you can see that one of the girls has a red thread, which is a, Hindu religious kind of thread around her hand. Another one has a Rudraksh mala around her hand. These are, ordinary kind of routine things that a lot of Hindu girls wear. And I said, you're not noticing those things. You are accepting them as part of your regular landscape. And your eyes are being trained to see the girl in the hijab as the sore thumb that's sticking out and doesn't belong there. And that is incredibly unsafe, as Sapika so eloquently said. It's incredibly unsafe, even if this thing is pushed back in the courts. Who knows what kind of what situation it's going to be in. And I want to say here that, one of the arguments in the court is it or is it not an essential practice in Islam? And I agree with Aisha here that I find this a very dangerous thing to be debated. What is essential to your relationship with faith or your relationship with your ideology? What you think is yourself? That is something for you to decide, for the woman to decide for herself. This is not for the courts to decide whether or not a woman, should be wearing a hijab or not. And it's absolutely atrocious that the Karnataka state is trying to argue that it goes against constitutional morality, the wearing of the hijab, because it's such a regressive practice and so on. And I want to say very emphatically as a feminist here, that there is no, whether it's a hijab or high heels, what you are wearing is something, some people are saying, oh, this is socialization to imagine that it's okay to wear this. I said, well, it's socialization to wear high heels. It's socialization to wear what I'm wearing. Who knows? What are the motives here? And absolutely, if there is any pressure, force, public shaming for wearing or not wearing anything, of course, women should not have to face that. And we have always been fighting against that. But this is not that. This is a practice where you are making these young girls the subject of intense scrutiny and hatred, hateful scrutiny. And it is not limited to Karnataka. I'll end my remarks by quickly pointing out that the same, basically this has become the latest thing for any Hindu supremacist who happens to have some power inside a school or college or a bank or wherever to start doing this. A bank in Bihar, one of the bank employees basically told a woman, you have to remove your hijab if you want to withdraw money. It's another matter that the bank manager stepped in and said, no, that's absolutely not going to happen. And he reprimanded the employee. But Delhi schools, this thing has started that we're going to stop people coming in with a hijab. It has now spread to saying maybe Sikh boys should not be allowed to wear the patka. All of this. So basically, this is irrespective. And the silence of the prime minister, the silence of the home minister, these speak volumes. Because basically, with their silence, they are tacitly, encouraging this thing to happen. And I would just say to whoever is listening to us today that there are far-right formations and far-right assertion all over the world. Please do not listen to anyone like, for instance, the German ambassador or someone who tells you, oh, the RSS is part of the cultural mosaic that is India. Sorry, that's racist. If you cannot imagine that there can be a fascist formation in India, that India can have politics and India can have far-right politics, then there's something deeply wrong with what you're thinking. RSS is not part of the cultural mosaic that is India. It is a Hindu supremacist formation that is deeply dangerous to everything that, Indian, to democracy in India, to minorities in India, to women in India. So I'll conclude here. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kavita, for those great words. I had no idea that a German ambassador or member of government had said that the RSS was part of the cultural mosaic of India. That's quite something. So anyway, thank you so much for this analysis. It was absolutely wonderful, and I'm looking forward to discussing it. Now, Safura, is she here? Kalpana? No. Shall we?
We should move to the video from Natasha.
Okay, great. So we're going to be seeing, Safura had a family emergency, and so she was not able to be with us until now. She may be coming later. So what we're going to do is we're going to move on to a video sent by Natasha Kaul, and I will read her biography before we show the video. Natasha Kaul is an academic, writer, and poet who works on topics related to Bhutan, Kashmir, nationalism in India, gender, and identity. She is an associate professor, a reader in politics and international relations at the Center for the Study of Democracy at the University of Westminster, London. In 2019, she was a key witness at a United States House Committee on Foreign Affairs hearing about the situation of human rights in Indian-administered Kashmir. Her most recent novel is Future Tense, which came out in 2020. And among her many other recent publications is Can You Hear Kashmiri Women Speak? Narratives of Resistance and Resilience, which was published in 2020 by the Women Unlimited Kali for Women Press in New Delhi and co-edited with Ather Zia. Okay, so let us show the video.
Yeah, I'd just like to tell everybody that Natasha has sent this video, and she sends her regrets that she's not able to join in person today, and sends her solidarity greetings to everyone on this panel. She has sent a slightly longer video and then given us permission to show a part of it. So I'm just going to start from the point where she gets into the main body of her argument. So there's just a few minutes that we've taken out at the beginning, but nothing at all significant. Okay.
Now, the complexity of the hijab issue is really that this would not have been an issue back then, back when I was a child, but also that it wasn't either something that you had to disown in order to show yourself to be a certain kind of citizen, nor was it something that you had to put on to show that you are actually embracing of your religious identity. So what happens, I know this is, this is not, I'm sure there are, you all understand that it is fundamentally wrong to deny someone the right to choice in terms of what they eat, what they wear, what religion they choose to profess, all of these things, what they, who they choose to marry. These are all kind of fundamental basic aspects of that guarantee the dignity of the human adult. The fact that people should have the right to be straight or gay. They should have the right to be to wear a hijab or to wear a bikini. They should have a right to choose their religion. And these are also not just rights that in most places, including of course in India, these are things that are part of the constitution. So what has happened is that these things have been made into contested symbols where you either have to not wear it or you have to wear it. And I'm talking really about that polarization. I'm talking about those who say that a woman has to not wear it if she's allowed access to education, or if she's allowed access to a workplace, or if she's given employment. That is fundamentally wrong. And it not only is it not reflective of any ethos or principles of the constitution or any normal idea of a secular democracy, it is also just fundamentally at a very basic individual level, very morally wrong. Now, if you think about the fact that there is another kind of way in which women are being told and shamed that if they do not wear it, then that is a problem, then that is equally wrong. Or maybe, take away the word equally. My point is that what women wear should be an issue that is not one which decides the left and the right, and where who gets to liberate women and who gets to protect women. Basically these gendered assumptions around who gets to liberate women and who gets to protect women, and on the basis of which the idea of left and right gets constructed, this is supremely problematic. And if anyone listening to this, if you really think about this, it beggars belief, all of the very horrible things that we have seen, just including in the last few months and years. If you think about, and I'm not even here referring to the broader Hindutva project. That I can't put it in 10 minutes, right? But there's enough things that I have said and written about the ways in which this project is transforming the country and taking it on this path that I have in the past also called proto-fascist, which words incidentally that were edited out by a news agency. But if you think about the fact that Muslim women were used on these platforms, that their identities were made the focus of commercial transactions in the Sulli and Bulli deals, these horrible events that we know of that have happened in recent time, it shows us how this gendered Islamophobia is functioning, how the idea of color and the idea of color, literally what colors a person wears, the idea of dress, all of these symbolisms are becoming part of a control mechanism, and there is an exacerbated moral policing of women's behavior, which of course has a longer history here. But if you think about this specific hijab case, the constitutional rights are under attack. It is, every day we see newer legal, social, and other vigilante provisions and activities that are undertaken with the fundamental aim of making minorities in India, and especially Muslims, feel unsafe. And while that yields its political profit, it is really important for citizens to be able to see what is being done in their name. when, of course, and this is, of course, really hard because there's a whole welter of mechanisms that are primarily meant to keep that ignorance in process, so people don't actually, get to think about these things. They don't get to actually critically think about these things, and they are constantly bombarded with the memes and with the cliches about, Muslims being regressive, Muslim women needing to be saved. Not this also, of course, gets operationalized in the context of Kashmir, right, where the idea of development and the idea of liberation is used as a means for justifying the fundamental violations of human beings, Kashmiris' human rights. And this is an older project. It's we know this from history. The idea that the natives those who were colonized did not have the right sorts of characteristics to be able to govern themselves, or to, in this case, to be able to conduct themselves, to be able to know how they want to dress, or what are the terms on which they want to access education or employment or anything else. And as then, just as it was problematic then, it is problematic now. It is what is happening currently. It's specious liberation talk. It's fake liberation talk by people who are hardcore regressives, and it reeks of barely concealed bigotry. So when people say, "Oh well, we are liberating these Muslim women by telling them what to do and how to dress," it just reeks of bigotry, even as it pretends to be progressive. Why do they target these people? It's visible and easy targeting. In contemporary India, it's a visible form of dress, and it's easy to target women. We have seen in not only this whole idea of love jihad, which is India's unique contribution to the world. This really, I mean, it's just insane in a sense. The ways in which all actions by minorities, and of course it won't stop at Muslims, the actions by minorities are all seen as always already suspicious, and the actions by Muslim are interpreted within this framework of jihad, so that whatever they do, whether if they gather at a meeting, if they take up a job for livelihood, sell vegetables, marry someone, all of that becomes seen as part of this sinister conspiracy. Now, at that point, people must stop and think to themselves, why is this extent of existential othering necessary for the country? It's necessary for maybe individual political figures, even for political parties, but why does a country need this level of othering? And in my work on Hindutva, of course, I've argued about the various dynamics of this, of how this project functions, which I won't repeat here. But I do want to mention that in terms of Islamophobia, it's multidimensional, it's pervasive, it's deeply rooted, and it functions in various registers. And I've previously spoken about how the Indian Muslim citizen is seen as a suspect citizen. The Kashmiri Muslim is seen as a latent terrorist. The Muslim refugees, such as the Rohingya, are seen as invasive pests. And the nation state of Pakistan, the neighbor of Pakistan, is seen as an existential other, enemy other, right? Not just a rival, by the way. So this is a very pernicious project. It creates, its aim is to create and perpetuate a Hindu idea of India, where all others, non-Hindus, and again, men, and then women, and then minorities, and then various kinds of gradations, that they would be entitled to almost, in practice, a de facto second-class citizenship, which would be where their rights and where their rights would not derive from them being rights-bearing individuals, but from the largesse, the benevolence of the majority, and the whims. So that is whimsical, right? So that's whimsical, and now we see this. It's these things, including with this hijab issue. It starts from one place, but it multiplies, and the timing of it, of course, there will be the general elections very soon in a year's time. There are the elections ongoing now, and these things actually kind of transfer across contexts. So this kind of hate speak is a kind of transferable knowledge. It has various modalities through which it can spread and be profitable for political figures in contexts that outside those states as well. So I think that this is it's really important that we talk about this. Protests for and against women's rights to do these things do not recognize the fact that this is women's choice. It is not, there's first of all the very obvious thing that Sikhs wearing turbans. It's part of their religion. Now, do we want to say that all Muslim women must wear hijab? Of course not. I certainly don't want to say it. I want to say that it is a woman's choice to dress how she wishes. And if she sees that as being part of her religion, then then that's her choice. If she sees that as something that she doesn't want to do, then that's her choice too. And this is why it's really important. Now, the thing is that it's like a catch-22 situation. By forcing a minority into a corner where the choice is between adopting adopting a position where they have to say, oh, well, this is something fundamental to our religion and every Muslim woman must do it. And on the other hand, the idea that no Muslim woman can do it. It's a false choice. It's a very problematic choice, and it's a choice that plays right into the hands of the majoritarian project, which wants to continue perpetuating this image of others. And all contexts are complex, right? So it isn't just that there aren't contradictions here. There are contradictions, but that's why it's important to think through this and to think of, what is it that is designated as different. The idea that, oh, well, if Muslim women are allowed to wear a hijab if they choose, then anyone can be allowed to do anything is deeply problematic, because the context matters. Like with all of these things, it is the context that determines whether something is reasonable within that context or not. And in this case, there are any number of people where I actually know the Kashmiri, but not the Hindi word for it. The thread, the red thread around their. I don't know what it's. There's a Hindi word for it, but that thread, that is any number of persons in any school or offices would be wearing that. Now, to say that no child is allowed to wear that after a puja that happens at their ghar is wrong, and likewise. Deciding for people that this is something they cannot be allowed to do is also wrong. It's not difficult to see that the argument for women's right to wear a hijab or to not wear a hijab should hinge on the idea of respecting women as individuals whose rights, just as gender rights, are also human rights, and that they should neither be, as I think Arundhati Roy has pointed out, they should neither be coerced in or out of a burqa. I think that was a context in the statement in the context of a burqa. But they should neither be coerced in or out of what they ought to wear. But this is exactly what happens, and it's wrong. It's fundamentally wrong. The fact that it's politically profitable does not explain why BEAM does not justify why individual Indians cannot think about it. They must and they should. And it's part of this Hindutva scripting of the country, what they want to see, by this method of creating constant controversies around minorities, right? So that people are never really secure, and they're constantly kind of rushing from one defensive posture to the next, and in that process also to try and paint them into repressive corners, and that's what's happening right now. So that's what I would like to really say, that it is very tragic what is happening. There is always hope in the fact that there are so many people of every kind within the country and outside who care for these things and who speak about it, and I hope that we continue to do so, and we continue also to speak not only to those who agree with us, but also to those who disagree with us, but not only out of bigotry and of which is born of bad faith. So there's always kind of this thing between a cocktail of malice and ignorance that's at play in the perpetuation of these bigotries. But I think we must also try to constantly address those people and get them to see why this is problematic. At least the ones whose political fortunes or livelihoods or whatever do not depend upon regurgitating the bigotries. To those people we can address ourselves, and I think most of what I'm saying and the points that I'm saying are oriented towards hopefully having that understanding be more diffused through how we think these things. That's all I would like to say. I'm really sorry that I would not be able to address the Q&A, but as I said to Kalpana, my work is all in the public domain. People are welcome to engage with me. Just not troll, but yes, there's a lot that we can do if we think together, and the situation right now demands that we do so. Thank you.
Sorry. Well, we want to thank Natasha for those comments. Although she's not here, if anyone has questions for or about what Natasha said, please raise them in the Q&A, and then others on our panel can seek to answer them or share their approach to those questions. So I see that Sephora has joined us. So Sephora, I am going to introduce you, and then you will have the venue. Okay. So Sephora Zargar is a student activist and leader. She is an MPhil student in sociology, focusing on urban studies at the Jamia Millia Islamia University. She was also the media coordinator of the Jamia Coordination Committee. Sephora was instrumental in leading the Citizenship Amendment Act protests, which inspired nationwide mobilizations against the Modi government. As part of her activism and her role in the anti-CAA movement, she was arrested by the Delhi police and was falsely charged as being part of a conspiracy to instigate violence and riots. Sephora was arrested in April 2020. Her arrest was condemned both nationally and internationally. She was released on bail in June 2020. And following her release, Sephora is still actively speaking out against the injustices of the Indian government on various platforms and events. Thank you very much, Sephora. Please, I hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Elisa. You speak too highly. I'm grateful for that. I'm so sorry that I could not, come sooner, be here sooner. I was actually attending a memorial service, and I am a bit morose. And then I have to talk about genocide, and I have to talk about hijab. And yeah, there are, I don't know where to begin, but I have 8 minutes, I guess. So I'll just start. I feel that when we are talking about that, when we are saying that India is on a brink of a genocide, I don't think a large number of people actually, understand, the gravity of the situation, because actually we say it so many times, and we have to, that it also like becomes like, okay, we've already heard it, and it sort of kind of becomes normalized, right, in our mind, that, oh, genocide, but what does a genocide actually mean, and it is not some things that has not happened in India before, and since 20 years of the Gujarat genocide, we have 20 years have passed since that, that dastardly, bestial, pogrom that happened in Godhra. Various fact-finding reports came about it, and the common thread in all of them was, the unprecedented scale of sexual violence against the women that happened in the Gujarat pogrom, right? It was also a specific targeting of women. And there was also a concerted effort to erase it also, which in fact added to that bestiality even more. So what does a genocide actually, look like? What were the kind of crimes that were committed against women? And it needs to be said in order to understand what all happened. And I'll be reading. The tribunals reported that women suffered the most bestial forms of brutality, of sexual violence, included rape, gang rape, insertion of objects into their bodies, stripping, and molestation. There was a distinct, tragic, and ghastly feature of the state-sponsored carnage unleashed against the Muslim minority in Gujarat, which was the systematic sexual violence committed against young girls and women. Rape was used as an instrument for the subjugation and humiliation of a community. A chilling technique which was actually largely absent in previous pogroms was very much the burning of the evidence, the deliberate destruction of the evidence that happened. In most of the cases of the sexual violences, the women victims, they were stripped, paraded naked, then gang raped, and thereafter quartered and burnt beyond recognition. The forms of sexual violence was forced nudity, mass rapes, gang rapes, mutilation, insertion of objects into bodies, cutting of breasts, slitting the stomach and reproductive organs, and carving of Hindu religious symbols on women's body parts. Sexual violence was being used as a strategy for terrorizing women belonging to the minority community of the state. And there are a few testimonies that I want to read. There is a woman who narrates that, I fell behind as I was carrying my son Faizan. The men caught me from behind and threw me on the ground. Faizan fell from my arms and started crying. My clothes were stripped off by the men and I was left stark naked. One by one, the men raped me. All the while, I could hear my son crying. I lost count after 3. Then they cut my foot with a sharp weapon and left me there in that state. My mind, there is another one. My mind was seething with fear and fury. I could do nothing to help my daughter from being assaulted sexually and tortured to death. The monsters tore my beloved daughter to pieces. After a while, the mob was saying, cut them to pieces, leave no evidence. I saw fires being lit, and then it became quiet. There is also the case of Kausar Bano, which was narrated by Saira Bano, who was, who was a relative of Kausar Bano. And she says that she was 9 months pregnant. They cut open her belly, took out her fetus with a sword and threw it into a blazing fire. Then they burnt her as well. These kinds of graphic, graphic descriptions of, the kind of violence that happened in the pogrom, in the Gujarat pogrom, I don't think words can do justice to the torture, to the bestiality of it all that happened at that time. Today, and I have been saying this since so long that, we see these isolated incidents of online abuse. Then we see women being auctioned. Then we see women rape threats, and all of these kinds of gory descriptions. I see it in my in my comments on my Twitter posts, Instagram posts, and everywhere. And I see it on other Muslim women, and I see on women also, other women in general also. But I see a specific kind of brutal, graphic, threats on Muslim women's, on timelines, on their profiles, and reading it every day over and over again. So we see all of these incidents because they happen over a time, so we tend to see them in isolation. And I have stressed this time and again that, this is not just online abuse. It is not just auctioning of women. It is hate speech, and hate speech has a purpose. And we do not fully realize the difference of using the right terminology to define what is happening. Hate speech leads to these kinds of acts, this kind of brutality on the ground. It makes me as a person or any woman susceptible to this kind of harm, to this kind of torture. This is what hate speech means. And all of these incidents, they are a prelude to this. I shiver when I say this. I shiver when I say this, but I have to say this, that it is a prelude to the coming times, and we are doing everything to prevent that for ourselves and, for our sisters, for India totally to be scarred with this kind of, violence that we will never be able to move away from. There is no reconciliation for this kind of brutality, for this kind of violence. There is no justice. There is no retribution. There is only baggage and lots of baggage that, that just destroys, it will just destroy everything. It will just destroy the country, if this keeps going on. When I see the hijab ban and I see people debating about it, I want to just, tell them to please shut up, because it is not about debating whether it is right or not, whether it is an essential practice or not. It is about the public humiliation that Muslim women are being subjected to on the roads of this country, where you are stripping them in the public glare and recording it and gloating over it and thinking that you're successful because a woman who does not want to show you her face, who does not want to show you her hair, is being forced, is being bent to do that because you own this country, because you own her, because she is not a supposed citizen of this country. This is the nature of the crime that they are committing on the streets of this country. Tell me if this is not a prelude to a genocide. What is it? What do I call it? And I am very angry and I am very enraged when somebody asks me for my take on the hijab row. I have no take. It is a prelude to a genocide and it must be called that. And today here, I am waiting every day when I walk into a genocidal situation. I am walking slowly and I see my surroundings and I see that, oh, this is one more step. Oh, this man was again lynched. Oh, this man was lynched and then he was booked under another act because he was trying to fight for justice. Us being criminalized for crimes that others are committing on us, and people watching the spectacle. It is a spectacle to watch or debate over. Or it is a hijab row, or it becomes a controversy, and everybody has to give opinions on it. I understand all of that. It needs to be talked about. But at the same time, it is so ironical that as I, or so many like me, walk into a genocide, I see people whispering. I can only hear whispers. I can only hear a gossip. That is all I can hear. So when this topic really came up, when Sarjeet messaged me, I didn't know how to squeeze it all into 8 minutes. But I think we do not understand when we use the term genocide, and we don't understand what it means, what it does to people, what it has the capacity to do to a nation, to a country, and there are so many examples for us in history that we chose to forget, chose to erase, and the other day, and I in the end, I just want to finish, but I just want to tell you that, just 2 days back, I was having a discussion with a friend, and, he just so casually told me that, genocide to hona hai, we know it's going to happen, we know we are going to be killed, but let's document it. And I'm like, how did you just say it like that? Like so matter of factly. I cannot absorb it because I am this person, this university student, just a young mother trying to deal with motherhood, who believes that, me coming on platforms, telling people about my situation, about my country's situation, is going to just fix everything. And, people are going to listen and wake up from their slumber and do something about it. And it's not going to happen. But when he just said it so casually, I think for the first time, I just thought about, oh my God, what will I do when that will happen? Like, will I have a place to hide? Where am I? In which area do I live? Will I have support? I mean, of course, the police is not going to help. So where will I go? What will I do? How will I protect my son? What will happen to my husband? I don't want to become a story. That is what I thought. And with this thought, thank you so much for giving me the space to share my heart with you.
Safura, thank you so much for sharing your heart with us. That was incredibly powerful. And I appreciate very much how you pointed out the violence behind the physical violence, the genocidal violence that is behind these more symbolic acts that are occurring right now, and how the Gujarat, the case, is crystallized within everything that's happening right now. I think that was really wonderful. Thank you. So we're going to move on to questions. We have several of them. I just want to say a few comments. I've been taking so many notes while everyone was speaking. I think this panel is incredibly important to raising awareness of what's happening in India now, global awareness, but also to sort of a deep dive into the relationship between misogyny, feminicide, and genocide, so that, I think, Safura, you mentioned sort of what is genocide, what do we mean by genocide? And I think everything that you all have been talking about today shows us that there's no clear line when genocidal violence becomes something we call genocide, and the term genocide is often associated with mass killing, but when you look at women's experiences, there just is no clear start. And so we could sort of see, and what you all are saying has convinced me that we're in the space of genocide now in India. It's just that Muslim women's bodies are where it's located, right? Where it's focusing its attention. But as you all have pointed out, the larger threat, a holistic threat against the existence of Muslims, the continued existence of Muslims in India is there. It's very there and very present. And so I think it's just incredibly important that we make that point that, and Kavita also talked about this, that the misogyny and the Islamophobia that is being focused on Muslim women is also something that is then focused in different ways on Hindu women and on other women who aren't conforming to a kind of fascist ideological view of what was it called, this sort of united India, greater India might be. So I think that long-term framework is really important. And also this sense that when we measure things by the experiences of Muslim women, we see a radicalization and a speeding up and a kind of a sort of coming together of all these different threads in a way that is truly alarming. And I think another thing I think is so important coming out of this is the problematic of conditional sovereignty, right? The way in which those kinds of red herring debates end up normalizing the very violence that they're supposedly addressing, and in normalizing it end up then being on the side or of assistance to perpetrators and a perpetrating tendency within a society. So I see that also in my own country, the United States. We have that problem too, where Black Americans, when they try to assert, for example, their rights, or immigrant populations or Native Americans, it often devolves into a debate about them, something about them, and the way they're saying things or whatever else. And so it takes attention away from the violence and from the threat that they're facing. So I think these are very important points. And finally, sort of, how the international world can help. I hope we get into that as we go to the questions. Okay, so I'm going to be quiet now, and I'm going to read off some of the questions. You all received many, many warm comments of support and praise, which was really wonderful to see and deeply earned. And this is just such a wonderful panel. Let's read the first one. Sending a warm hug, Sabika Abbas. I'm so sorry for what you've had to face every day. Thank you for so succinctly speaking your heart and mind, and for your brilliant analysis. I'm deeply struck by your statement about lack of allyship and your sense that an electoral defeat of the Hindutavadis will only be a band-aid. And that relates, so I want you to comment on that, and that relates to a question that was asked about whether or not you all think that with the upcoming election that we will see greater and greater violence committed against Muslim women. So I guess Sabika will start with you, but if anybody else also wants to address this, please do.
Yeah, thank you for the comment, Smriti. But the larger point being that that electoral defeat of the Hindutvadi government is just one step towards removing this hate, because we cannot forget that this project of hate has been going on for a very long time. RSS and its allies have put in a lot of money, resources, people, effort, hard work into establishing this kind of hate. And so even after the electoral defeat of this government, inshallah, there has to be a lot of effort put into de-radicalizing the youth. I mean, imagine we're living in a country where when a Muslim teacher has to remove her hijab to enter the school premises, there are people in the background laughing and smiling. It is villainous. There is a media person waiting to record the whole the attack on this Muslim woman, the way she is disrobing herself. There are people holding cameras into her face and making a public spectacle of it. So the violence is not going to reduce, because really there are really the majority, a huge chunk of the majority community doesn't care. I mean, as Sapura said, it is as if they've forgotten the history of genocide. But I say that there might be people, but there's a chunk of people who've forgotten the history. But I say that the Hindus have learned the history and using same things again and again to take us to that point. So they've learned how genocide has to be done, what is the systemic way of removing Muslims, killing them, ensuring that they are no longer present in the country or are treated as second-class citizens. And the demand is not new. From people like Subramaniam Swamy to the recent BJP MLA in Bihar, everyone has very vocally and openly said, we want Muslims to be second-class citizens. And then there is this other side, this burden that any fight that Muslims are putting forward needs to be, we have to prove it to be secular. For a Muslim woman to, a lone young Muslim girl who is just going to school to study, is going to college to study, is hounded and heckled by a mob of radicalized Hindutva youth. And she raises a fist and she says, Allahu Akbar. And then there is this whole debate online where she doesn't have, she could have said, hail the constitution instead of saying Allahu Akbar. So there has been a lot of dictation that is being given to Muslims in the way they react to this violence as well. So I feel that the project or the fight to bring them down, the fight to assert ourselves, assert our identity is a very, very long fight, goes beyond electoral politics, cannot happen without allyship. We have to wake people up. People have to come out and stand up for us. Someone has commented that when are we going to organize the march in the parliament? I am asking our country, my country, and our fellow citizens through whom we have always tried to, we've been forced. There's a burden of patriotism on Muslims all the time. And there's this burden for us to continuously prove that our protest spaces are quote unquote secular and constitutional, that our protest and articulation is secular and constitutional. there's this force on us, and in the face of lynching, in the face of hate, in the face of rape threats, in the face of all these bully buy, sully deal, all the apps and auctioning and continuous violence on us, we've maintained that we've loved this country, but enough. It's the time for this country to love us back. And so the fight is long, the social, political, the fight to get social justice, the fight for human rights is a long fight. And it's really long. It has to be from the education system to public spaces to homes that have become centers of hate. Everything has to be reformed. And when hard work has been put into hate, love, social justice, harmony, equality, all of it requires hard work, 3 times the amount. Not possible without solidarities, not possible without unconditional solidarities.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wonderful, thank you. Does someone else want to address this, or shall I read out some of the other questions since we're running low on time? Is that all right if I read out the other questions? And then, okay, wonderful. Okay, so some of these I'm going to read them all at once because they are statements as well as questions, and so I'm going to read sets. So there's a question: is civility overrated in this whole thing, especially if allies ask about the worth of friendship, etc.? So it's sort of a comment. When will the Muslim men and women be on the offensive instead of always being on the defensive? When will we stop favoring secularism and be proactive as Muslims as their right to pray and dress religiously? Another comment: born in the UK and training as a teacher when the first genocide happened in 2002. I started wearing the hijab then in London as a teacher to show solidarity with the Indian Muslims who died. Yet I'm shocked and very upset that I have to see that calls for genocide again after 18 years of teaching. Is it due to the lack of awareness and follow through and investigation from international bodies during the first genocide that there was no post-prevention methods or guidance given to the government after the incident by the UN, for example? So that's a question about what was done after the first genocide and whether it could have been improved upon to help prevent what's happening now. There's another question related to that, here, there's a question related to this international aspect. Ms. Zargar describes the reality of Modi and his cronies of Hindutva goons, human rights and anti-discrimination. Any civilized bodies must at least shame the current government of India. Can we file a case in the World Court in The Hague, taking the reports before the Indian courts that lies dormant in lain dormant in Indian courts for decades? So there's a question about sort of legal redress in the past and in the present and its role. Does anyone want to answer that thread about legal issues? Okay, while folks are thinking, I think these are very interesting ideas about possible legal action that can be taken internationally. I will continue reading.
Just one point.
Yeah,
the
please.
Legality of it. The fact being that one cannot forget that even the legal system, especially the legal system in India, is completely sold out. I mean, the RSS as well as the hateful establishment has ensured that they've planted people across the country in India to ensure that justice is not served. So there's a dwindling belief in the justice system in India. And when we talk about internationally, one can also not deny the kind of lobby that the hateful genocidal government has across the world. That is why, as Kavita pointed out, there's a reason why a German ambassador goes forward and says something like that, or so many people hail RSS to be synonymous with India and the Indian culture. So I think that there's a lot of lobby internationally as well when it comes to denying basic rights or staying silent in the face of genocide that Muslims are facing in India. And the silence silence is not new. The silence in the justice system as well as internationally is an old silence. They've stayed silent on the Kashmir issue. They've stayed silence on the genocide that happened in 2002, or the massacres that have happened over the course of time in India in the last 20 years itself. So I think that there's this, or so many people being behind bars. So there's a huge lobby when it comes to international legalities, as well as the Indian justice system anyway seems to be sold out and not in the favor of the minorities and the marginalized, and not just Muslims, but we look at any community that is on the margins, whether it is the trans community, the Adivasis, or the Dalits in India, it's the same that they're facing.
Thank you, Sabika. Thank you. Okay, so some other comments. The hijab is nothing but a Muslim version of the palo, which has been practiced by Hindu women for generations. If we visit the rural areas of North India, you will find Hindu women covering their heads with the ends of their saris. I think you all pointed that out as well, that it's not about the hijab. Mashallah, Sister Aisha, excellent points, including your highlighting of Islamophobia of leftist liberal feminist allies. Inshallah, we will fight and win. Someone noting we need action. What have the people done in India to organize and protest in front of the Indian Parliament House? Maybe this is something we can talk about, the kinds of protests that are being organized and galvanizing support and the organizing that is going on. Someone has written, since the chat is disabled, I want to thank Kavita for her eloquence. Thank you for shedding light on the Hindutva ideology. Does anyone want to talk about organizing? There are some questions here about organizing and sort of what can be done. And maybe perhaps our organizers. Aisha, would you like to address that perhaps? Or Kavita, Sephora, Sabika?
Well, I just very briefly would say that, see, one cannot, I don't think we can speak to what people in other countries can do and all of that. I think the only thing I would say is that what is happening in India, and especially the movements that are happening in India, the protests that are happening in India, there is information about that available from all of us, certainly, but also from South Asia Solidarity Group and in the UK and other sources. So I think, amplifying that and, showing solidarity with what is going on in India, and certainly including India in the conversation around, concerns about far-right regimes and their repressive actions all over the world. I think that would be extremely important, because there is a global conversation from Trump onwards and all of that about this concern about the rise of white supremacy and white supremacy and far-right politics and all of that. And I think that Hindu supremacy to be part of that conversation is important. And countering in the West, as Sabika very correctly said, there's a lobby that is trying to push the notion of Hindu phobia. So the use of that word is very, very, it's a red flag, because Hindu phobia is a word that is used by the Hindu supremacist ecosystem to basically deny the existence of Islamophobia in their politics, in the Indian government, and all of that. That is not to say that perhaps a Hindu person facing persecution or facing harassment or discrimination in some other country, in the US or the UK or Europe or wherever. Certainly, that could happen, that might happen, and that is something that they may face racism and all of that, and all kinds of prejudices, stereotypes, and absolutely that should be addressed. But that is not what these people are talking about. They are trying to use the sympathy for that to basically muddy the waters and say that any criticism of the Modi regime, any talk about Hindu supremacy as a politics is a criticism of, is hatred against Hinduism. And that is absolutely something that needs to be resisted. So if you hear that conversation anywhere, if you hear these words anywhere, these phrases anywhere, certainly, step in to counter that and set the record straight. That criticism of Hindu supremacist politics does not mean, calling for the wiping out of Hindus. Right. Far from that, you are having a situation in India where there are public speeches being made which are calling for the extermination of Muslims, which are calling for the mass sexual enslavement of Muslim women and forcing them to produce Hindu children. I'm not exaggerating any of this. These have happened absolutely openly. The people making these speeches are not in prison, whereas Muslim organizers and anti-Hindu supremacist organizers of protests against discriminatory citizenship laws and so on are in prison and have been in prison for the past more than 2 years because their actions are being seen as a conspiracy. Safura was among them. So I think that is what I would say in terms of what can be done, and perhaps there are other groups, the organizers could add something if they like. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Yes, and I'm scrolling through the other questions, and we've sort of answered all of them. I just want to read out. Oh, sorry. Yes, Kalpana?
Can I just add a few things?
Oh, yes. No, I'm sorry, Safura. Sorry. I had the Q&A on my screen. I couldn't see. Please go ahead.
It's fine. It's fine. Sorry to interrupt you, but since, Kavita also said that, since I'm here in person, I feel that it is my moral responsibility to talk about what my fellow co-accused who are also in prison, and also about why I was in prison. So so the problem is that it is so hard so whenever I'm called on these platforms to speak and speak in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, it is so difficult to highlight the multilateral ways and the extent in which the state is operating against Muslims in India. There is legislative level, executive, judiciary, at all levels you see this kind of you have to, this kind of system which just traps you, right? Specifically in the case of I would say that in the case of judiciary, see the law, how the law traps you. So marching to the parliament, you just said march to the parliament, why don't you protest in front of the parliament? So that's what we were doing, that's what we wanted to do. And for 3 months we could not take out one protest march from our university, which is situated in Delhi, to the parliament, which is situated in Delhi, just a few kilometers away. And that one march, what all we have gone through. On the 15th of December, police entered our university and, vandalized it, beat students left, right, and center, paraded students like terrorists with their hands raised above their head outside the university. Even today, the area that I'm living in, I live just 700 meters away from the university. At the drop of a pen, there is a section 144 imposition here. That means that more than 4 people cannot assemble. It becomes like a military, like it's a siege. You will see army sweep in, like that RAF sweep in. Then you will see the police sweep in, like in huge numbers, like 10, 12, 15 cars, and like hundreds of policemen swarming the area at the drop of a hat. That is the situation that we are living in right now. So when you enter Jamia Nagar, the area which is around the university, which is also misappropriately called as the Muslim ghetto, that area, when you enter it, you will feel a difference. You will actually feel that, oh, you are entering some area, some sort of a military zone. And now there is also a police, a police chowki, like a police booth kind of place where, the policemen stand there, and, there are barricades and you have to go through them to enter the colony. This is the capital city of India, New Delhi, where we are living and going through this sort of, militarism that has happened in our, in our area. So 3 months we could not complete one march, and violence happened at Jamia. I mean, the police barged into the university and beat students up, filed cases against the students the very next day. Then students continued the protest, then there was all this propaganda, there was all this disinformation spread about the protesters, about Shaheen Bagh, targeting of women, and all of that, the propaganda kind of built up, and statements by the Home Minister, saying all sorts of things. I really do not want to repeat it right now. This happened, and then what happened was the violence, the Delhi, the Delhi pogrom happened, that was the culmination of the protest. How do we protest? Every protest, and then, that happened. 53 people were killed. 2/3 of them were Muslims, and Muslims are in jail for killing Muslims, burning properties of Muslims. A shop of a Hindu shopkeeper is safe, but the attached shop of a Muslim shopkeeper is burned. If it is owned by a Hindu shopkeeper, then the shop is vandalized but not burnt. This is how strategically the mob proceeded. This is what happened. And then I find myself in jail for orchestrating riots. I was framed, and I spent 74 days in jail. Under UAPA, we were booked under a terror law. If it not have been happened with me, I would think that this is absurd. It is impossible. But you can go and check the facts. I am not even exaggerating one bit. This is what happened. In fact, I think I'm missing so many details, because I did not come prepared to talk about it. But yeah, now that we're talking about it. So this happened. I was in jail for 74 days just because some students decided that we want to march to the parliament to show our dissent against the CAA. This happened with us. So how protest gathering has been criminalized in India. A student, a 21-year-old student, Disha Ravi, was in prison just because she forwarded a toolkit, in the farmers' protest, a social media toolkit which said, click here for liking on Facebook and, do this and like this page. It is absurd. And it is all holding true in the judiciary. It is a cruel joke, except that the joke is on us. The joke is on us. So, sometimes I just don't, I also laugh about it. But yeah, I mean, I have that bad sense of humor where I also laugh about it because it is so absurd. It's unbelievable. And sometimes I feel that it's a nightmare and it's just going to end soon. But all of this happened with me, and we were 21 accused in the Delhi riots conspiracy case. And now we 3-4 of us are out, and 18 of my friends, activists, students are still in jail since last 2 years. They have not been able to get bail because a draconian anti-terror law is slapped on our case. And I am also, and those of us who are out are also living life as a UAPA accused, where all laws of jurisprudence are subverted. I mean, I am a criminal unless I prove myself otherwise. That is how I am also living my life. So under constant scrutiny of right-wing propaganda machinery that, they want to ditch at every word that I say and prove that I am a terrorist. I am a jihadi. These are the words that are very casually used for me. That these are the words that I live with, and how every day on social media, the name of the father of my son is asked over and over and over again, like 1,000 times on every Twitter post, on every Facebook post, and on every Instagram post. This is the life that we are struggling with, every day. So protest is criminalized to such an extent that, I think if somebody asked me to protest, I literally do shiver at the thought of going to protest. I don't feel ashamed to admit that. You know, I do shiver at the thoughts of going to protest. It is only when very recently that I have actually stepped out into the public, because the pandemic also came after that, and I started going to programs and I started attending a few public gatherings. But it is scary to imagine going back to that place, you know, to back to that humiliation, you know, being caged that way. Although there is also this constant urge, I would say, to not be silenced, because that's what they want, you know, and do not give them the satisfaction of having silenced you. But it does come at a price, you know, at a very heavy price. So even what we also look at the larger civil society, you know, Kavita is here, and we look at the larger civil society to actually, you know, raise all of these issues, and you know, people from the majority community to actually flag these issues, just like Kavita did right now, talking about how, you know, propaganda is sewn together through words like Hindophobia, and how even there is an attempt to completely tilt the Delhi pogrom narrative, you know, in the sense that show it as being anti-Hindu, where 75% people who died were Muslims. Lives were lost of Muslims, livelihoods were lost of Muslims, houses were burnt of Muslims. And they are actually getting away with this propaganda is the most absurd part. There is a book that came out on this propaganda. It is rubbing wounds on the you know, on the struggles of all of those people who died. In fact, on the dead bodies, you know, of all those people. It is rubbing wounds on their dead bodies that such events are taking place. Where are they taking place? They're not taking place outside of this world or outside India. They're taking place on Indian soil. They're taking place amongst the civil society that we are, you know, we are also part of. They're taking place in the press club. The press club, you know. And this kind of narrative, which is everybody knows is false, it is absurd, is existing. It's like it's there on the ground. And, you know, sadly, there is little that we are able to do about it, because everything seems to be, you know, going against us right now. You know, I mean, there were in the hijab case, the hijab, the denying women, Muslim women, the right to wear the hijab case. You know, girls went to the court, and then again, people were like, "Oh my God, why did you go to court?" You know, this is the kind of discussion that we're having, and I'm very honest about it, because, you know, the court has reserved the order, but the kind of arguments that we've seen happening, the legal you know, experts are not expecting something, a favorable, you know, a favorable order maybe. And then the whole debate about that, so why would you go to the court? So you can't go to the court, you can't protest, okay? What do? You can't exist. Basically, the only way is to be silent, so that some political party can have an electoral win. Don't talk about it, because it will polarize the election further. I always say that this kind of, and also Sabika also was saying that this kind of electoral win is of no use, because this is exactly what they want, to make Muslims as social, electoral, cultural pariahs, you know, to erase us further and marginalize us. That, you know, even like election is a really big thing in which, you know, all of these issues are taken up, controversial, and everybody wants to, you know, use it against the other party and do that. But nobody's talking about the 23 people killed in Uttar Pradesh in the Uttar Pradesh election. Why? Because they were Muslims, because it will further polarize the election. It is absurd, the kind of politics. I recently worked on a report on the state of repression in Uttar Pradesh, and I cannot tell you, there were, at every step, I was being advised to not launch this report in the midst of the election, because, oh my God, it will polarize the election. So basically, I don't talk about the 23 people who died of bullet injuries, and there is not even a single arrest and investigation into who killed these people. And the 1 lakh people against whom mass FIRs have been filed in Uttar Pradesh, because it is going to polarize the election. That is the adverse situation that, you know, we are faced with, even from the allies, well-meaning allies, you know, I would say, because they do not understand that talking about it might give us a short-term gain or a win, but what are the long-term ramifications of it? Because they will be able to bank on that hatred, that isolation of Muslims, that because they have created their enemy in the Muslims, and they can again bank on it and resurrect that fear and come back to power tomorrow with greater majority. And that is what happened when in 2014 BJP came into power, because we'd never addressed these issues, because we never talked about it, because don't talk about it, it will polarize the elections. This is the kind of, absurd narratives that, are happening in the country right now. And I'm sorry, but I cannot give you hope. I mean, that is how it is.
Can I just come in, because I think that was so important, everything which you said, Safura. We are being put under pressure to start the next panel. But I'm so glad that you made those points, because I think it really also underlines to all of us how important it is that people take a stand globally and counter these kind of ridiculous myths of Hindu phobia, which Kavita mentioned, and so on, and actually act to recognize what's happening and to project it. So, I mean, I just wanted to urge everyone who's here from the UK to join our protest on the 20th of February at the Indian High Commission. It's the 20th anniversary of Gujarat 2002. So we're commemorating everybody who died. We will never forget them, but we're also drawing attention to what is happening right now. And that solidarity is absolutely crucial. So please do join us. We're also, even if you're not in the UK, we have produced a letter addressed to the UN rapporteurs on violence against women and on minority issues, highlighting particularly the things which this panel has explained so powerfully about how Muslim women are being targeted. So please do share that, and I've put it in the comments. Please amplify it. And please do follow us on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, so that you can find out how to get more involved and to actually take some action around what has been raised today, so that it's not just a question of informing yourself, it's also a question of actually acting and supporting. I know, Sabika, you don't like to be called courageous, but it's very difficult not to use that term after listening to all of you here today. So if you have felt that and you've been inspired, make sure that you actually, make the connections with what's happening where you are. The organizations which are, holding the conference are all involved in actually in that activity, in that activism. So, I know we're really being put under pressure to just stop. So I'm going to say thank you so much, Elisa, for your sharing and for your insights, and a huge thank you to everybody on the panel. And just really wanted to express our solidarity with you at this point. Thank you.